I came across a short clip featuring my partner. She was dressed in a plain white blouse and denim jeans, casually lounging on her bed at home. In the video, her left hand was firmly clasping another man's hand. Strangely, those weren't my hands. It was Monday at the office, and all my coworkers were casting amused glances my way. After the meeting concluded, our supervisor, Mr. Thompson, gave me a friendly pat on the back. "Jake, you're quite something. Congrats on getting engaged to Emily." As soon as he finished, the entire workplace burst into applause. Conversations about weddings, sweet treats, and future children filled the room. Naturally, I was both surprised and happy, quickly expressing my gratitude to Mr. Thompson for his kind words. Yet, I couldn't help but inquire, how does everyone know? I haven't shared anything on social media, nor have I sent out invites. My colleague, Mike, promptly pulled out his phone and opened Instagram. "You're usually so private, but Emily has already made it official." I glanced at the screen and saw that my girlfriend had uploaded a new video, showcasing scenes from our recent trip to Bali last week. Sunny beaches, swaying palm trees. She was wearing a vibrant summer dress. Beneath her radiant smile, she declared, "I've made the most important decision. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Emily is a short video content creator. With her exceptional, innocent appearance and self-taught photography skills post-college, she has always maintained an artistic and fresh, almost ethereal image online. She primarily shares her personal and travel photography, boasting over 50,000 followers as a travel photography influencer. However, throughout our year-long relationship, we never went public. She mentioned that being in a relationship could lead to losing followers, so I respected her choice. As a software developer with such a partner, I was already very satisfied. Emily was also intrigued by my work, often visiting me at the office discreetly. Especially in recent months, the sudden presence of a beauty in the company naturally caught my colleagues' attention, making my relationship with an influencer an open secret within the office. Today, as Emily was getting ready to announce our relationship publicly, I felt it was time to stop hiding. I decided to tell everyone. "Guys, actually, last week in Bali, I proposed to Emily." Immediately, the office erupted in cheers, and everyone offered their congratulations. My phone buzzed with notifications. "Oh, Emily has posted another new video. Everyone, check it out." I couldn't resist and opened Emily's account, eagerly waiting for her to mention my name to her fans. What happened next left me stunned. In the short video, my girlfriend was wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, casually lying on her bed at home. Her left hand was tightly holding a man's hand, but those weren't mine. Emily smiled sweetly and said, "Hello everyone, I'd like to officially introduce my new partner, Tom." Then, a man in a matching white t-shirt greeted the camera. A female coworker exclaimed, "I recognize him. He's so charming and good-looking. Plus, as a photography influencer, he's a perfect match for Emily." Realizing her mistake, she quickly covered her mouth. The entire meeting room fell silent. Everyone either quietly left or changed the subject. Mike comforted me, patting my shoulder. "Jake, stay strong." But how could I stay strong? I had just proposed, and now my girlfriend had publicly announced her infidelity on Instagram. I felt embarrassed and deeply hurt, wanting to smash my head against the wall. My commitment to Emily wasn't just romantic. I wanted to spend my life with her. But now, what was Emily doing? Could there be some hidden reasons? Desperate, I left the office and immediately called Emily, but she didn't answer. I then sent her a message on WhatsApp, trying to remain calm, hoping for an explanation. However, Emily still didn't respond. Suddenly, I thought of her mother, Mrs. Johnson. I had met her several times before, bringing gifts and spending time together. Emily grew up in a single-parent household. She told me her father had betrayed her mother, leading to their divorce during her childhood. Her mother worked tirelessly to support her. Mrs. Johnson always dressed elegantly, paying great attention to her lifestyle since she was to be my future mother-in-law. I didn't mind assisting financially, but I did wonder if Mrs. Johnson truly lived as frugally as Emily had described. Whenever I questioned this, Emily comforted me, saying that once she was independent, she decided to earn money to support her mother and allow her to enjoy life. Although Mrs. Johnson was in her early 50s, she mostly spent her time relaxing, sometimes helping Emily with her studio and daily life, but often playing mahjong outside. From the start of our relationship, I felt that Emily's mother took a liking to me. Every encounter was warm, with Mrs. Johnson calling me hero. I believed she would support our relationship, so I immediately called her. Sure enough, I received the reassuring words I hoped for. "Oh, Jake, it's not true. It's just a business collaboration." Mrs. Johnson's response was casual, but in the video, the affectionate gestures and loving looks couldn't be mere business. I responded painfully, "Aunt Jenny, I proposed to Emily during our trip to Bali. We've come this far. How can she announce a fake partner now?" But the older woman laughed coldly. "I heard from my daughter, but I haven't agreed to let her marry you." I was shocked. This was the same enthusiastic Mrs. Johnson who always greeted me warmly. I said, "Even though Emily didn't explicitly say yes, she accepted the engagement ring I gave her, and I even put it on her finger. That's separate." Mrs. Johnson continued mockingly, "I can imagine your reaction, Jake. What's so special about a ring? At least come up with a dowry of 1 million first. I'm decent looking, standing at 6 feet tall, and a graduate of a top university with a computer science degree. At 28, my monthly salary was between $40,000 to $50,000. Originally, I should have saved enough to buy a house in this bustling first-tier city. But for Mrs. Johnson and Emily, I became someone who lived paycheck to paycheck. Being with Emily meant they had to enjoy the best. Fine dining, high-end fashion, luxury hotels during travels. Whenever I was with her, I did my best to provide the best experiences because all I wanted was to be with her. Mrs. Johnson knew well that I had become financially strained because of them, yet now she was using this to refuse our marriage. Are there really such ungrateful parents and daughters? Perhaps sensing my frustration, Mrs. Johnson said, "Jake, you are indeed good, but my daughter is now a celebrity. Her social influence and earning power surpass yours." She advised me to act sensibly and ended the call. I was furious, wanting to destroy my phone, but I thought Emily might be facing some difficulties. Loving her, I couldn't believe all the happiness we shared was just an illusion. I composed myself and asked her out for dinner that afternoon. Eventually, she replied but declined, stating she had a live stream during dinner and couldn't make it. Back at the office, I returned to my desk, took a deep breath, and tried to calm down. Then I searched for videos posted by Tom. My anger surged as I saw that Tom had also been in Bali the same day Emily and I were there. He had posted a video and visited many of the same places we had traveled. Sharp-eyed fans in the comments pieced together that Emily and Tom had been interacting for a year. Comments like, "I'm shipping them," "Tom and Emily are such a good match," and "They've been dating for a year now," filled the section. I took screenshots of these comments and sent them to Emily, waiting for her explanation. At that moment, Mr. Thompson, who oversaw the company's HR development, called me to his office. Recently, the company was promoting middle management, and Mr. Thompson was handling this task. My projects over the past 3 months had all been successful, generating substantial revenue for the company. When everyone heard Mr. Thompson call me, they looked at me with surprise, and I felt confident. Mike, sitting next to my desk, looked at me enviously and said, "Jake, don't forget us when you get promoted." Reinvigorated, I entered Mr. Thompson's office, sat down, and looked at the nearly 50-year-old always stern supervisor. Today, however, he wore a rare smile and courteously poured me a cup of coffee. I felt flattered. The usually aloof manager was recognizing my recent outstanding performance. "Jake, actually, I wanted to talk to you privately after the meeting. You know the company always respects talent." Mr. Thompson began, making me nervous again, but he quickly shifted his tone. "However, the internet industry is tough right now, and many companies are laying off employees." Hearing this, I immediately frowned, wanting to respond, but was halted by Mr. Thompson's gesture. He continued earnestly, "Don't worry, you are a key employee, and we still need you. However, we may have to transfer you to Group C temporarily." Group C was essentially the layoff group, a method for the company to reduce severance costs and optimize staff. Once assigned to Group C, benefits and treatment would decline, and without projects to work on, resignation would soon follow. No one had ever returned from Group C. It was like adding insult to injury. I couldn't accept it and left Mr. Thompson's office with a heart full of resentment. I received a message from Emily on WhatsApp. Just 3 words: let's break up. I had lost my girlfriend, my job, my money, and my genuine feelings. I thought this was the path to a lifelong relationship, but she dismissed me so callously. I couldn't comprehend how I ended up in such a pitiful state. As soon as I entered the company's restroom, I couldn't help but cry bitterly. As an adult, it felt like I was releasing all the grievances and pain from my life. At that moment, Mike patted my shoulder and handed me a tissue. "Jake, don't be discouraged. We all know about your transfer to Group C, but it's not your fault if you want to blame someone. Blame your influencer girlfriend." My crying stopped abruptly, and I looked up confused, asking Mike how my job situation had anything to do with my girlfriend. Mike leaned in close and whispered, "Actually, many people in the company have seen Emily frequently entering and leaving Mr. Thompson's office." This revelation shocked me. I couldn't believe it and accused Mike of spreading rumors. But Mike insisted several people had seen it and he could swear on his honor. "If you don't believe it, you can check the company's surveillance." He also mentioned that parts of the company had long held grudges against Mr. Thompson's management. Could it be that Emily and her mother suddenly abandoned me because they found a new benefactor? The more I thought about it, the more everything made sense. My resentment and pain towards this mother-daughter duo deepened. In an instant, thoughts of revenge surfaced in my mind. A month later, at a high-end cosmetics store in the city's upscale shopping center, I watched Mrs. Johnson rudely apply a sample face cream provided by the salesgirl with her entire palm. No amount of makeup can hide the wrinkles formed by that vulgar smile. Not bad. This one suits me, Jake. I'll take this one. Then, let's go to the store next door to pick out some clothes. I had gained weight recently and had nothing to wear. I almost laughed at Mrs. Johnson's commanding tone, but maintained a serious demeanor and proceeded to pay with my card. "All right, Mrs. Johnson, so there's really no hope for Emily and me?" "Oh, you know, you're a good person, but you just don't make enough money." Mrs. Johnson sighed hypocritically while grabbing the sample hand cream and rubbing it on her hands. She continued, "But since you still know how to show filial piety, as long as you can ensure my quality of life in old age, I might consider it." Mrs. Johnson raised her hand and suddenly showed 5 fingers. I also held up 5 fingers, smiling. "So you're saying Emily and I still have a chance?" "Oh, you really are dense. What I mean is, I'll give you a discount of $50,000 if you can come up with a dowry of $950,000. I might consider it." Hearing this, I realized that despite all my sincere feelings and efforts, Mrs. Johnson was still exploiting me. This only strengthened my resolve for revenge. Suppressing my anger, I continued to smile and said, "You know I can't come up with that much money right now. I'm buying you gifts on credit cards. I can't just beg on the street. I don't care what card you use. As long as the money comes in, there's a chance. Otherwise, no way." Just then, Mrs. Johnson's phone rang. She took it out, and her expression changed. "Oh, my friend Lou, I can't play cards today." It seemed Mrs. Johnson had a friend who enjoyed card games. Although neither she nor Emily were locals, they quickly integrated into the city, making friends from various backgrounds. I had heard Mrs. Johnson liked gambling, and her stakes were never small. After Mrs. Johnson hung up, her face turned sullen. I approached her with concern. "Mrs. Johnson, why aren't you playing cards today? Didn't Emily give you any living expenses?" "She did, but it's too little," Mrs. Johnson murmured. In reality, Emily probably gave her quite a bit, likely over $10,000 a month at times, knowing Mrs. Johnson's greed. I took out my credit card and said, "Mrs. Johnson, why don't you get a credit card too? You can spend money in advance. Even if you can't withdraw cash, you can buy gifts and offset the cost. It's like carrying an extra sum of money with you." Mrs. Johnson, who hadn't studied much and knew nothing about credit cards, was thrilled at the idea of getting money in advance. "Is there really such a good thing in this world?" I patiently persuaded. Yes, I can drive you to the bank to apply for one right now, but remember, Mrs. Johnson, don't exceed your limit. Before I could finish, Mrs. Johnson grabbed my hand excitedly and dragged me out of the mall. No more talking, Jake. Forget the clothes. Just take me to get a credit card and don't let Emily know. Without hesitation, I cooperatively took Mrs. Johnson to the bank and helped her apply for her first credit card. A month later, Emily's Instagram live streams were bustling with activity. After announcing our relationship publicly, her followers surpassed 1 million. She now constantly live-streamed and sold products, earning money from her fans with her sweet and innocent persona. Due to her public relationship with Tom, she adopted a new image fitting current trends, the sweet, fairy-like sister and her young, handsome beau. They even made some vlogs together. Emily not only gained male fans, but also attracted a large number of female followers. Her lifestyle and approach encouraged many girls to boldly pursue their crushes, regardless of age, and to embrace sweet older woman-younger man relationships. Tonight, during her live stream, a fan with the ID Heartbroken Jake sent her the biggest gift. Now, all the fans regarded Heartbroken Jake as the top supporter. Emily coquettishly smiled at the screen, saying, "Thank you, Heartbroken Jake. With my company, you won't be heartbroken anymore. Love you. Moi." However, beyond the screen, I only felt disgust and nausea at Emily's smile. Emily not only managed her online persona, but also lived it in reality. To this day, she hadn't apologized to me. I was like invisible air to her. Our relationship and feelings evaporated as if they never existed. I was merely a cash machine during Emily's transitional phase. She would never have guessed that I was Heartbroken Jake. Not only did I become her top fan, but I also became the leader of her fan club. I created a short video account specifically for Emily's fan support group, compiling and sharing her previous content and daily life. Sometimes, I even shared exclusive photos and videos. Unknowingly, this account amassed around 100,000 followers. I also created WeChat fan groups to interact with other fans. Fans remarked that I must be a true supporter because I knew so much about Emily. Yes, every time I made a video about her, I did it with tears. But after each release, I was filled with intense hatred. Emily had abandoned and betrayed me, toying with my emotions. A week later, I teased the fan groups with a special evening live stream, attracting a large number of hardcore fans to join and watch. However, the fans started cursing as soon as they entered the live stream because it was just an ordinary office corner. About 10 minutes later, the office door opened and closed. A uniformed man and woman entered the office, embracing and kissing passionately. Soon, the man began groping the woman, and she didn't resist, instead moaning, "Mr. Smith, you're so naughty." The fans quickly became excited, and viewership skyrocketed. Some fans exclaimed, "That woman looks like Emily." No, that's Emily, the voice and the figure. How could Emily be with an older man? So disgusting. Just as the couple was about to get intimate, the live stream was shut down. I soon received a violation warning from the short video platform, but it didn't matter to me. My message had already been delivered because the fan groups had exploded with activity. Some sharp-eyed fans took screenshots and posted them, questioning what they had seen. Soon, hashtags like #EmilyPersonaCollapse, #EmilyAnnSmith, and #YourSoNaughty were trending. Overnight, Emily had inadvertently confirmed her own cheating and betrayal, having an affair with an older man. In reality, Emily did have an affair with Mr. Smith, even though I was quietly placed in Group C. I hadn't given up on investigating everything. Through my investigation, I discovered that not only were Emily and Mr. Smith having an affair, but they were also meeting in the office at night when fewer people were around. Once I figured out their secret meeting times, I took the risk to arrange this special live stream. I asked my colleague Mike to place my spare phone in Mr. Smith's office and start the live stream. Sure enough, fate was on my side. This live stream forced Emily and Mr. Smith to face the consequences of their actions. The internet was now in an uproar, with most fans angrily condemning Emily. As for me, I suddenly felt calm. Alone at home, I opened a bottle of beer and took a deep drink. I still hoped for an apology call from Emily, But instead, I received an anonymous text message. When I opened my phone, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. How dare you? Apologize publicly before midnight tonight and admit that you were wrong. This week, you can be transferred to Group C immediately, and you'll win the biggest prize in this year's year-end raffle. This message clearly had Mr. Smith's tone. To clarify, I was originally in Group B, now optimized into Group C. Group A was the department everyone dreamed of joining. As for the year-end raffle, the grand prize was usually a car, but it was almost always won by the company's leadership. A big scam. Now I understood that there was no such thing as fairness in this company. It was all manipulated. But I was a programmer, making a living with my skills. I didn't need your charity at all. Moreover, even at this point, these people showed no remorse towards me. At midnight, they received no response from me. At 1 a.m., I saw Emily's new Weibo post and a new short video. In the video, Emily rarely turned off the filter, crying her eyes out and looking haggard. She repeatedly emphasized that she had been secretly filmed and that she was the biggest victim. Regarding everything in the video, it was supposedly a rehearsal for an office anti-sexual harassment play. She claimed she was preparing to transition and had signed a cooperation agreement with my company to film short office dramas. She said it was meant to surprise her fans, but accidentally turned into a shock, and she was very sorry. She then addressed the difficulties faced by women in the workplace, hoping to set an example and encourage fellow women to guard against workplace sexual harassment. She also reminded netizens not to believe out-of-context secretly filmed videos and that she would use legal means to sue the heartbroken Jake who broke her heart. To be honest, although Emily's explanation was far-fetched, she spoke confidently and played the emotional card of women's workplace struggles. Tom also stood up, looking like a heartbroken beau, to support her and confirm everything is true. Quickly, many fans chose to believe her again. A campaign to hunt down heartbroken Jake spread rapidly online, with trending topics like #EmilyInnocent, #EmilySnoo attempt thwarted by secret filming, and #WhoIsHeartbroken Jake gaining attention. Emily's follower count on short video platforms not only didn't decrease but skyrocketed to 2 million. Early the next morning, I took a leave of absence from work. Then I received a call from Mrs. Johnson, who furiously cursed me. "You scoundrel, don't interfere with my daughter's success. Don't ruin her future. Mr. Smith has powerful connections. All the things you bought for my daughter and me, I'll send them back to you today." The more Mrs. Johnson cursed me on the phone, the happier I laughed because I had recorded the entire conversation. Thanks to Mrs. Johnson, Emily now had an incompetent ally. Around 2 p.m., I received a large package. When I opened it, I found that the cosmetics were either empty bottles or used packaging. The clothes and bags were either torn or old. This older woman was still scheming. She hadn't returned anything, not to mention the engagement ring I gave to Emily was missing. I let things simmer a bit longer. My heartbroken Jake WeChat account had been buzzing all day with notifications. As midnight approached, I calmly opened my document and posted a prepared article on Weibo and in the fan groups. The title was, "Let This Truly Heartbroken Boyfriend Talk About Emily." In this 1,000-word statement, I recounted my entire journey with Emily, from getting to know each other, falling in love, to her betrayal, hiring Tom to play the fake boyfriend, and her affair with my company leader, Mr. Thompson. Of course, my narrative was emotional, but based on facts. To ensure my writing was compelling, I asked Mike to review and edit it. In short, it seemed like a personal statement, but it was a meticulously crafted piece of revenge. Sure enough, the internet was once again ablaze. This time, because I stood up and revealed that I was Emily's real beau, the public opinion shifted in my favor. Tom couldn't take it anymore and posted on Weibo, stating that his relationship with Emily was purely business. He even shared photos of their contract and revenue-sharing agreement with key information blurred out. Mr. Thompson, using a disguised account, tried to speak well of Emily online and criticize me, attempting to steer the narrative, but I directly posted screenshots of the text messages he had sent me. This time, both the disguised account and Mr. Thompson himself were exposed by netizens. Mr. Thompson chose to remain silent. As the saying goes, every man for himself in times of trouble. However, even at this point, Emily showed no remorse and made no attempt to contact me. The day after I posted my statement, Emily's Weibo updated again, this time under her mother Mrs. Johnson's name, claiming that Emily had suffered from online harassment by her ex-boyfriend, had taken sleeping pills in the morning, and was now in the hospital for gastric lavage and rescue. It seemed that this mother-daughter duo was going all out. I was extremely disheartened, knowing that once we reached this point, there was no turning back and no way I would sit idly by. I decided to visit the patient in person. I quickly made my way to the hospital and found out which room Emily was in, but as soon as I exited the elevator on the hospital floor, Mrs. Johnson blocked the doorway. She started wailing and tried to push me away. Outside the hospital room, Mrs. Johnson was hysterical, shamelessly accusing me in front of everyone. "Jake, how dare you come to the hospital room?" Mrs. Johnson was hysterical, shamelessly accusing me in front of everyone. "Jake, how dare you come to the hospital? My daughter needs rest and can't be disturbed by you. If you take another step, I'll call the police." "Mrs. Johnson, let's talk calmly. I just want to check on Emily." While trying to pull Mrs. Johnson to the side, I signaled to the man wearing a hat accompanying me to sneak into the hospital room. Everyone's attention was on me and Mrs. Johnson, so no one noticed the man entering the room. "Oh my God, someone help, I'm being filmed again." Soon, we heard a young woman's voice from the room, clearly Emily's. Given her lung capacity, it was evident she wasn't unwell. We all rushed into the room only to find Emily lying on the bed holding an apple in one hand and a tablet in the other, watching a show. She looked rosy and completely healthy. On the other side, the man with the hat was Mike, tightly gripping his camera and recording the scene before him. A nurse also walked in. "This is a hospital. Please leave immediately. The patient needs rest or we will call security." In front of everyone, I pretended to be surprised and said, "Emily, didn't you have your stomach pumped? How are you still so energetic?" The nurse, puzzled, sighed. "Stomach pumped. This patient said she was uncomfortable after a gastroscopy and is resting here. By the way, you all need to leave soon. You don't really need to be hospitalized, and hospital beds are in high demand. Please make room for patients who really need it." In front of everyone, the mother and daughter finally bowed their heads in shame and embarrassment. "I'm sorry. It looks like I misunderstood. I'll be leaving now." After saying that, I motioned for Mike to follow me out. "Jake." As soon as we got downstairs, I heard Emily's voice calling out to me for the first time in a long while. I turned around and saw Emily running towards me. I signaled Mike to step back. Now it was just me and Emily. It felt like we were back to the beginning. Emily suddenly threw herself into my arms, crying and apologizing. "I'm sorry, Jake. It's all my fault. I hurt you. I've made money now. I'll repay all the money I spent, and we can start over." "Okay." Emily then looked up from my embrace, her big, tear-filled eyes looking pitiful. For a moment, I felt like we were back to the old days. "My dear Emily," I sighed softly, reached out my right hand to gently wipe away the tears from her eyes, and slowly said, "So you finally realize your mistake, Emily." Emily smiled and said, "Yes, Jake, I know I was wrong. Promise me you won't let your colleague post today's information online. You can post a statement on Weibo saying we've reconciled and I can start managing my finances again. Let's pretend none of this ever happened." As I gently caressed her cheek, my hand suddenly tightened and slid down, gripping her neck. My left hand joined in, choking her tightly. Her smile froze instantly, turning into a hideous and terrifying expression because of my grip. "Even now, you're still trying to deceive me. In the end, you only care about yourself. You have no remorse whatsoever." Jake, a reminder from not far away, brought me back to reality. I quickly released my hands, and Emily fell to the ground, clutching her neck. She first gagged, then started cursing at me. "Men are all worthless. How could someone like me end up with a toad like you? Even if you were reincarnated 100 times, You wouldn't deserve a hair from me. And let me tell you, Mr. Smith will not only fire you, but as long as I continue to work with him, I'll become a millionaire soon. Ha 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 ha. In my mind, I had already cursed Emily 100 times, but I knew I couldn't resort to such barbaric actions. I am a gentleman. She is a scoundrel. I couldn't dirty my hands for her. Daughter, send money to your mom quickly. At that moment, Mrs. Johnson stumbled out of the hospital entrance, clutching her phone and pleading with her daughter. Emily stood up, annoyed, and said to her mother, "Mom, what are you doing? Can't you see I'm dizzy, cursing this worthless man?" "Daughter, I heard everything you just said. I know you have money now, so Mom is in debt recently. Please help me pay it off. Creditors are threatening my life." "Emily, are you in debt to some of your gambling friends again?" Mrs. Johnson looked at me, then turned to Emily and held up 5 fingers. "You owe 5,000. Mrs. Johnson shook her head. "What? You owe 50,000? Mrs. Johnson shook her head again. "You can't owe $500,000, can you?" Mrs. Johnson, looking a bit embarrassed, admitted, "I opened more than a dozen credit cards, some using your name, and I can't pay them off right now." Emily, enraged, scolded her mother. "You can't even read. How did you manage to open credit cards?" Mrs. Johnson started crying again, pointing her finger at me. I was surprised myself, realizing Emily's mother was so extravagantly wasteful, opening over a dozen credit cards and maxing them out. Emily, now furious, began to curse at me and even tried to hit me. But bystanders stopped her. I stood still, not retaliating at all. I said coldly, "Emily, I just told your mom where to get a credit card. I didn't encourage her to overspend, so I don't bear any responsibility. It's her own doing." Indeed, they were truly a family. Both mother and daughter were extravagant and spendthrift. "Mom, it's okay. I don't have that much money right now, but we still have Mr. Smith." Emily then took out her phone, trying to show off in front of me, but no one answered on the other end. She then took out her WeChat and tried to make a voice call, but her whole body froze. She suddenly collapsed to the ground, crying. Mrs. Johnson panicked and said, "What's wrong, daughter? If Mr. Smith doesn't answer the phone, we can go find him in person." Emily, crouching on the ground and holding her head, trembled. "No need to find him. He blocked me." Mrs. Johnson also crouched down, crying and cursing at me, blaming me for everything. Mike, seeing this, was ready to take more photos and videos, but I stopped him. "I've had my revenge. Let's leave them a way out." Without looking back, I walked out of the hospital with large strides. Somehow, I felt refreshed, as if the path outside the hospital was blooming with flowers under the bright sunshine, welcoming a new beginning. A year later, the door to Mr. Thompson's office opened, and Mike walked in with a pile of documents. He respectfully placed the materials on my desk, where I was sitting in the manager's chair. "Manager, these are the latest quarterly reports from Group A. I've returned from Group C a year ago. After Mr. Thompson was fired due to his scandal, I was promoted from a technical position to a managerial one because of my outstanding performance. I took over his position and also promoted Mike from Group B to Group A, making him the department leader." "Manager, have you heard the latest about Emily?" Mike asked. Jake, seeing me busy with the materials, added, "Guess where Emily went after her live stream account was banned? She and her mother fled to the Pearl River Delta, but they're still the same. Vain and irresponsible. Emily hooked up with a wealthy factory owner, but it turns out he's married. She was beaten by his wife, making local headlines. I saw it on my phone and forwarded it to you." "No need," I replied. "Those two are no longer my concern." I didn't look up and continued with my work. Mike gave me a thumbs up and praised, "Manager, you're amazing. Who knew you'd have so many brilliant revenge tactics? I want to learn from you. These aren't my tactics." I stopped working and finally looked up. Seeing Mike's puzzled expression, I continued, "The reason I succeeded is because of their own greed, which ultimately led to their downfall. I merely accelerated their self-destruction. When two people are truly open and sincere in their relationship, no external storm can shake it. Emily just took advantage of my genuine feelings, misusing my true love. In the end, her own evil intentions led her astray, and she suffered the consequences. Now, I've achieved career success and earned the respect of my colleagues and family. I look forward to finding true love in the future.